episode of The Dealer Playbook, a podcast that explores what it takes to create a thriving career right here in the retail auto industry. I'm your host, Michael Cirillo, delighted, overjoyed to be joined by my pal, Brian Kramer. We are going to dig in to how you can modernize your dealership process. You know, something about world events in the last couple of years has had the industry reeling about what's coming. What's the next thing that will potentially disrupt the way the automotive industry works? The pandemic, with widespread lockdowns, demonstrated that there is, in fact, a growing demographic of consumers that would prefer to buy a vehicle online. Yet, many dealers are struggling to evolve from the traditional way of doing things. And I don't blame them. I mean, it can seem like a daunting and overwhelming task. There's a lot to consider. I mean, I remember when my family business was in the telephone book publishing industry. Imagine evolving from something like that to the automotive marketing sphere, and especially digital. I mean, it was a huge leap. I remember just kind of sitting there sometimes with my, scratching my head, being like, what am I doing? Like, there's so many facets, okay? And so we completely get how overwhelming this task can be. Luckily, we get to sit down with a dealer who has done a tremendous job at galvanizing his existing business processes for digital transformation while preparing methodically for what he calls the future barbarians at the gate. Brian Kramer is the general manager of Germain Toyota of Naples and is the pioneer of 100% paperless transactions. In so doing, he has forged a path in assisting dealerships with their digital evolution. My man, Brian Kramer, welcome to the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan, so I appreciate being a part of this.
Well, you're too kind. You're making me blush, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give you easy questions either. Just I'm just kidding.
I figured that was going to be the case. So.
I'm kidding. First, I want to kind of dig into, what do you mean by galvanizing existing processes?
So, good question. So very similar to galvanizing metal, there's a certain set of steps that have to be layered in. And if you don't galvanize it, you're not going to protect it from long-term corrosion and rust in the long term. Nokia, Blockbuster, the hotel industry as we knew it before, the mom and pop. When I used to come down to Florida as a kid from Ohio or Chicago, we would pass by all these mom and pop, very similar to the dealerships, and there would be four of them, and you go negotiate from this location to this location, and all of a sudden, when it got flattened out digitally with Travelocity, before Marriott started branding themselves, and Expedia and all the other stuff in between, it wasn't an efficient market, and now it is. So to prevent it, because the car business is just about 20 years behind that, in my opinion, and we're going through the biggest tipping point I've ever seen in 26 years. So we've got to galvanize ourselves so that we don't rust out and, become obsolete.
So what are some factors you're considering as part of that? I mean, when did this first hit you? You said 26 years, so I'm assuming 26 years in the business now?
Yes.
And so at what point do you start taking note and saying, oh man, like there's a shift coming and it could potentially impact my industry?
Well, the first time I ever experienced it was back in 97, 98 when Auto by Tel came in. And they said, this is going to be the end of car salespeople as we know it. Their customers are just going to buy directly from the internet, and it's going to be, like buying books on Amazon. And everybody freaked out. They're like, what's going on? And really, at the end of the day, the OEMs mandated a computer in the corner of the showroom. And they asked me to do it at one point. They said, hey, can you just update the website, update this, and you handle all these deals. But you had no empowerment, no control, no enablement, which is still an issue in this industry today. Right. And I couldn't desk a deal. I couldn't give the customers the information, but they wanted to go end to end. And that was in 97, 98. And I don't think that much has really changed since then. From a model, there's still, in most cases, they still have to go to the desk to work numbers. They still have to, it's not a decentralized environment. It's a very inefficient thing. But to fast forward, when I first signed up for Amazon Prime, I thought to myself, how easy is this? How loyal is this? The first time I ever didn't consider price as the number one motivating factor. and then started trying to break it down in reverse. How do we reverse engineer this? How can you do something like that and watch it? And really at the end of the day, it was all about the customer. And I really wasn't connecting the dots on that. And as Bezos kept saying, oh, it's about the customer. You look at the customer, reverse it backwards. Same thing with Steve Jobs. And it's easier said than done. And then selling the rest of your team on that. And I've worked in multiple dealerships, privately held, publicly held. And the difference in this current dealership where I'm working at is I've got the most amazing team, managers. Most of them are homegrown from within. They all share a common vision. From Wendell, my GSM, to Ryan, my new car director, and Ben Pettit, who I brought down, Josh James, and they all have different roles, and Steve Dietrich, Taki, Karen Nicholas, none of them do the exact same thing. They switch it up. They all know exactly what their role is on like a SEAL team. There's a gunner, there's a demolitions guy, it's just everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and they can trust each other that it's going to get done.
Yeah, I kind of love that visual, right? You picture this squad rolling down the street, and each of them is so focused on their role, but in so doing, they're actually providing the best service that they possibly can to each of their other team or squad members. And often in the business landscape, it's kind of like this every man for himself. I've even noticed like people that say, oh yeah, my team, but they don't like that. It's more lip service. They don't actually, their behavior doesn't demonstrate team. And so I love the sentiments that you're sharing, because, to have you as a leader in the store going first and foremost to, I have a team, like acknowledging how great your team is, shows the culture shift that is required, I think, to do what you said, by essentially reverse engineering the customer. Right. And
they got to sincerely do it, not just like you're saying, lip service, where, oh yeah, we're all about the customer. You advertise it. And then once they show up, oh yeah, I got a special deal for you, which is what happens in so many dealerships.
We often hear too, like it's top down, right? A lot of the times when we talk about this kind of stuff, we go, well, leadership, it's got to come from the top down. So let me ask you, as a senior leader in your store, what does that look like for you? What are some things that are on your mind, or what are some things that you consider on a daily basis in order to demonstrate that leadership to your team?
So I would say anymore, it's reverse mentoring. I just went on a trip here recently where I was the old guy for the first time in my life with all these younger guys, and I'd never experienced that before. And it was a surreal experience, and I was being reverse mentored by some really smart people, which is what I am constantly here. And I throw out a lot of crazy stuff, and so do they, but some of the stuff that I really try to stretch it, because I try to go outside of automotive and say, well, if this works here, I just had this experience at this appliance store and this really cool thing that I experienced online. And most of the people that I'm surrounded with are younger than me. And it's more, Wendell, my GSM, and myself that are older than all these guys. So they're teaching us technology and how to connect everything, but they're also teaching us that it took me a long time to be comfortable being called out. And, like the last Saturday of last month, every single morning we have a huddle game plan. Here's what we're going to do, especially on Saturday. So you're going to be on appointments. You're going to be doing one-on-ones. You're going to be doing showroom TOs. And we switch it up to keep it fun. So it's not getting redundant. But I told Josh James, I said, here, I want you in the conference room with me, because we're going to do save a deal. And we're going to go mine for all these unsold appointments. And we're going to go through appraisals. That's how we're going to get to the number. And he said, with all due respect, and I'll do whatever you want to do, I don't think that's the best route to go. I said, okay, why is that? And he broke it down succinctly. And I said, you guys all agree with that? And they all unanimously voted against me, which I'm all about. And insecurity didn't used to allow me to do that. But right. We hit the number, exceeded the number, and they were right.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was just watching a Howard Stern interview with the Foo Fighters. And one of the questions that Howard Stern asked, and by the way, spoiler alert, huge Foo Fighters fan over here. I don't know what it is.
I am too.
Like they
not just Dave Grohl.
Yeah, man. Like they've got to be the AC/DC of our generation. You know what I mean? Like they just keep going. Anyway, so Howard Stern asks what it's like to the rest of the band. Essentially, what is it like working with somebody like Dave Grohl? Because we all know that, first of all, Like, you were the drummer in Nirvana. Like, you've got some clout. Next, you're known for basically picking up any instrument and figuring it out yourself without any training, and then writing incredible music, and then going into the studio because you taught yourself to play all these instruments and just play all the pieces yourself. It essentially, whereby overpassing your team. And there's a reason, stick with me, my beloved DPB gang, because this goes along with the thoughts and impressions that I have listening to Brian. Well, they all start saying, yeah, you know, it was difficult in the beginning because of all of these different factors. Dave Grohl himself shared basically a similar sentiment to what you just shared, which was like, yeah, it was difficult because I was like, this is the way I'm hearing it in my head. You play it this way. And if you can't play it this way, I'm going to do it. I'm going to play it. And there's this challenge, right? Because in the back of their minds, could you imagine the stress? Like, ultimately they know, yeah, he could do it himself. Like, I'm replacing.
He can't do it all himself.
Bingo. So now that he's a little bit older, he's a little bit wiser, right? Like, he's got to be pushing 50 now. He said on the last probably 3 or 4 albums, he realized that he was the biggest barrier to them ultimately creating music or a piece of art that could go to the next level. So he says himself in his own words, and I mean, you could look it up on YouTube. He says, I had to just like get the F out of the room and let them do their thing. And then I'd come into the room and realize they had created something in a way that I probably would have never even thought of. And then here we are with an amazing album. And it made me think of that, you know, just super relatable to what you just said. Like, my insecurity got in the way. But look at, you also said something here that I wrote down, which is willingness to be taught. Like, how many leaders do you think can actually say that? And especially in a cutthroat industry like ours, like the willingness to be taught. So I think that's tremendous. Now, let me ask you this. You pioneer a paperless transaction or process. How do you navigate going from paperless, old school, traditional dot matrix printers? How do you go from something like that to 100% paperless? What was the first thing you tackled?
So if it hadn't been for COVID, it probably wouldn't have happened, because you got to have enough data. Like, if I was to do it today, I don't think it would be possible. But the first thing was laid out the vision. This is what it should look like at the end. Does everybody agree? Oh, yeah. All right, let's just figure out what it's going to take in order to make that happen. And normally these guys are so busy sawing that they don't have time to sharpen the blade. So I finally had the time to be able to process map it. And when I went to the Disney Institute, they do something called customer journey mapping or process mapping. So we mapped it out and we figured out, okay, this is where we are. This is where we need to be. What are all the friction points in between? And as we started going through it, we identified that there was basically 8, 9 main friction points. And we had to tackle them one at a time. And the key was not to tackle another one until the first one was complete, which was absolutely painful, because you want to be able to just start mowing them all down individually. In retrospect, what I should have done is I should have assigned each manager one pain point. We would have gotten there a lot faster, instead of me hijacking them and holding them hostage in a conference room on a whiteboard. Okay, how do we do this? How do we do this? The only reason I was able to keep their attention is because there was no customers. Because if not, they would have bailed on me.
I thought you were going to say food.
Right. Well, that's actually one of the interesting things is they said, I don't know how many customers want to do this. You know, we're building this whole process. How do we even know that we're even doing this for, what's the point? Until we have any data. The customers I talk to don't want to do it. I go, well, when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, I didn't want it either because I didn't want to let go of my keyboard on my BlackBerry. And it took me 2 years to adopt that because I didn't want to change myself. But they don't know what they don't know, and we haven't shown them, you know, what it could be. So how do they know that they don't like it? And as that's happening, DoorDash is delivering food to every single one of them because nobody wants to leave. And I said, you see the irony here that it's happening right now with you and you're comfortable doing it. How do we make that happen for the customer? And then we just went down through, you know, selection, test drive. How do you do it in store, virtually, remote? And each one had a different journey. You know, how do you do a virtual trade appraisal, which has been a game changer for us. How do you work menus, price, and payments? And the answer to that ultimately is enablement and empowerment. How do you do the F&I process virtually? That was a very, and the short answer on that is you take the dot matrix printers and you unplug them in the middle of the night, and they're not there the next day when everybody comes in. So you burn the ships in the harbor. Right? So, and you do the same thing with forms, and it's no different than, it's burning the ships in the harbor. Streamlined F&I checkout.
How long did this all take? It wasn't an overnight thing. You've said that, but I mean, and during a pandemic or a lockdown or anything like that. So feasibly for dealers listening today, now that we're not in lockdown anymore and things are starting to open up, how long does this take?
So we were getting close to it, and I think every dealer's 70%, 80% of the way there. Mm-hmm. It's that last 20% that's the real pain point. And you've got to be willing to let go of other ways in order to put insane amounts of energy behind the few things that you do choose to move forward with. And I had to be okay with letting go of some other things that were bothering me. And, showroom traffic control. And, you only do 2 or 3 things at a time. So everybody's, hey, don't you see this? Don't you see that? Yeah, but I have ADHD. I can only focus on, I'm already at a disadvantage to begin with, let alone you start throwing all this other stuff on me. So as we're going through what's the most important thing, it's also important to say what you're not going to control, and you have to be willing to let go of a few things. But the answer to your question is it took about 60 days if you really grind at it and you really map it out and plan it. But that was just the beginning, because once we felt like we put a flag on the top of Mount Everest, that connecting this stuff is easy in retrospect. It's changing the culture to where everybody believes it, so that when you walk out the door, they believe it. And now they believe it more than I do. They just held me accountable on my sister's transaction. They wouldn't put her name on it without a deposit, because that's what triggers everything else. And they thought it was a test. And they said, no, he's just testing the culture. Do not hold that car for his sister. He has to go through the same process as everybody else. And I ended up putting in a deposit because I couldn't get a hold of her, and I didn't want her to lose the car because the inventory is so tight. But they're right. And they should hold me accountable to that, because I can't preach one thing and then tolerate something else.
I think that's super interesting. It's a matter of eating your own dog food.
Yes.
Right? You got to eat your own dog food. And I love that you've built a culture whereby your team is comfortable holding you accountable.
They're very comfortable.
How do you do that? How do you set that tone as a leader?
So we went through the 5 dysfunctions of a team training, by starting with trust. And what held us back a long time was we weren't comfortable confronting each other. And we talked earlier about the role clarity and diffusion of responsibility. We used to have 3 people at the sales desk. Now there's 1. So there's only one person. They know there's no other support coming. There's no lifeline. They've got to get it done. And the person on appointments, if they don't get it done, it's very clear who didn't get the appointments done. And they also have to be very okay calling each other out without fear of retribution. And not publicly, but in private, which they do an amazing job of. And they do an amazing job of calling me out. Hey, I needed this from you. I know you got this going on. And it puts a lot of pressure on me, because I got to live up to my end of the deal no differently than they do with what I committed to, because it's like a promise. But it doesn't, that takes time.
And you've got to have, I guess you got to be comfortable enough in your own skin to not feel threatened by that as the senior leader. I think a lot of times, I mean, if I look back at my own leadership journey, where, I used to be the stereotypical boss, you know what I mean? Like, you show up, I write your paycheck, you do the work, end of transaction. But I also,
that's all we do. That's what we saw.
Yeah. And the transformation that takes place when you start caring for people. I mean, I went through motions where I'm like, wait, but then will they take me seriously? Will they respect me as a leader? Will, like, all of these thoughts. And I can only imagine if I thought those things, other people's must be thinking those things as well. But you are another living testament to the fact that this can be done. And that it requires a great deal of self-awareness, but that willingness to learn and then willingness to take out, like roll up your sleeves and get into the dirty work.
And it's hard when because when I first got here, I'd worked for Germain before, but then I left and went to work for AutoNation. But when I came back, I wanted everything to happen a lot quicker than was realistic, right, with the expectations and the clarity that was currently in place in the technology. So I'm trying to microwave it instead of slow cooking it,
right, and
breaking things along the way. But we were in performance review. The store wasn't doing well, sales efficiency, service retention, you name it. And it was, there was opportunity.
Right.
So in the face of OEM pressure to still dig in on the culture, that's the most painful, some of the most stressful experiences I've ever been through. Yeah. We brought in Tim Kite, who was Ohio State football's culture coach, which was not a inexpensive thing. So to spend money when you're not making a ton of money at that time and talk about culture, which is more of a soft, it's not immediate by the end of the month marketing spend. Let's spend this and we can get this. If we do a mailer, we can generate this much immediately. It's such a long-term play. And he talked about trust. He talked about the number one thing he and Urban Meyer said that helps an organization is eradicating BCD, blaming others, complaining about why things or complaining about circumstances or defending why things happened. And really, for the most part, that, including them doing it to me, inventory shortages, even to bringing it up, my staff, management staff, and the sales staff. Whoa, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing that up? We don't want to hire you. We want to sell 25 cars today. We need 25 cars. And the more will come in tomorrow. We don't need to, we're going to sell 600 cars this month. We've got 37 new cars on the ground.
Wow.
But it's an everyday,
Yeah, you're in the game. You're in the game. I love that you bring up.
More so them than us.
Yeah.
Or is it them than me?
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, I mean, but it goes back to full circle to your analogy in the beginning, like every squad needs a leader. Right. And so. But
it's more decentralized command.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think sometimes what we suffer from in not just this industry, any industry, really any business, is they go, oh, the leader isn't really doing much, or the coach of the team just stands there and calls the play. No, you would feel it if Urban Meyer stepped off the field. You would feel it. You know what I mean? And same with your star players. Like it is a fine dance, right? To navigate that. Switching gears a little bit. Who or what are these barbarians that you speak of at the gate?
So, not to call people out specifically, but I would say Carvana, Vroom, Shift, not just those entities, but I would also, CarMax has already been there for a minute, but they're just now getting into this online realm. Mm-hmm. But I would, and this is going to sound harsh, I compare a lot of these to the Nazis, when the Nazis were lining up, and I know that's, I'm trying to make that my.
I was thinking you were going to say McDonald's or Amazon.
Make that my session topic at Digital Dealer, because here's why. So because it's no different than France on the Eastern Front. Neville Chamberlain in World War II is sitting there saying, well, I don't have to worry about the Germans. I know they just rolled Poland. And Churchill's saying, look, this is a real thing. They're coming this way. They've been building up this whole mega system. And, oh, no, that's fine. They're not a threat to us. We don't have to worry about it. Charles de Gaulle, hey, not a big deal. Well, hey, they lined up a 250-kilometer traffic jam of tanks right on the Eastern Front, right outside of Belgium. That's a problem. Well, they haven't filed a declaration of war, so we don't have much to worry about. Well, guess what? Carvana and Vroom don't have to deal with MAC guidelines, OEM restrictions on the website, what widgets, what vendors, what does Shift Digital say that they can, there's no mandates, right? Can I run a Super Bowl commercial with, jumper cables in an interrogation room? Yeah, they don't. Right. So I'm actually coming up with a campaign, a TV campaign, can you call a vending machine after you take delivery? And, not be on hold for however long? Can you talk to the vending machine? What happens after the sale? I just had a customer issue this morning that was resolved. He goes, I didn't think this was going to get handled. And I said, well, it's not like you're dealing with a vending machine. That's why you deal with a local dealer, so you can come in and deal with a real person. But the real thing that's happening is auctions are drying up. Everybody's saying, well, there's not enough cars at the auction. Can we find this? ADESA and CAR are going completely virtual and getting rid of their bricks and mortar, auctions. Then you've also got Car Offer, backlot cars, ACV auctions. All of that is becoming decentralized. So when we're in Viata, we're trying to figure out what should we appraise a car for. If we're only looking at 60% of the data, and as the auction volume is down 125,000 units per quarter, Carvana is selling 92,000 cars in Q1, and they're doing it at $3,800 a copy. So everybody can say, oh, well, Carvana is crazy, just like they said about CarMax. They're putting stupid money in these cars. Well, they're still selling them. They're selling them profitably because they're not looking at everything like the way we've always looked at it. They're looking at historical data.
Right.
They're looking at what can they sell the car for in their market, and they're not all hooked on the same. And I'm not saying not to use the auto, but that you should use multiple sources of data, not just become reliant on one, because then it's like the fleas in a jar analogy.
Yeah.
And all you gotta do is jump out.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes me think of also getting upset with a competitor for seeing a different way of doing things and then doing it that way. I'm sure, or at least I would like to think that if we somehow invited the CEO of Carvana or Vroom to this Zoom session right now, he's not going to be a dick of a human. He's probably just like, hey, I'm a guy that saw a business opportunity and I went for it. But here we are, to your point, in a very regulated industry where so many things don't make any sense. Like, why is Shift Digital still a thing? I have no problem saying that. Why do they have that
kind of control?
Yeah, and why do they have the amount of control that they do? Like, they're a monarch or a governor general, for crying out loud. And nobody knows what they do except for make our lives more difficult. Why does this still exist, and how can we hope to evolve? So I think the frustration, for me at least, comes from the fact that it's like trying to turn the Titanic around in a bathtub to see any changes happen. But meanwhile, we are focusing our frustration at another group of individuals living the American dream.
That have removed obstacles, and I've studied these competitors extensively, and they're extremely intelligent. And the way they go about doing business, and I have copied Carvana and Vroom's acquisition strategy. I have zero problem acquiring trades. We've got more trades than we know what to do with, and used cars. And everybody said, we can wholesale some of them to me. And really, if they just use Carvana's play, you don't need the auctions because you'll have more inventory than you know what to do with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's tremendous.
But you can't play games and you can't hold back. And I had a conversation with my managers the other day, and they go, we're still working that deal. Let me talk to them. And I said, well, we held back $500 on the trade. And Carvana doesn't do that. Vroom doesn't do that. Well, let's just see if we can get it for that. I go, how about I'm just texting them the appraisal, and I'm going to bump it $1,000. Well, hold on. And I said, because I'm going to look at it like Carvana and Vroom do. First of all, I'm going to be transparent, and I'm just going to do the law of reciprocity, and I'm going to establish digital trust by just telling them what it is without any commitment from them. And I know that on that particular year, make, model, that we average 5 times that when we retail it. The problem is we can't get enough of them. So as many as humanly possible, I'm just going to just reach up. They go, well, yeah, but it's 112%. I don't care what percentage it is. We sell them for this, and we sell them in 6 days. Yeah. Whatever that percentage is, throw it out the window, because 2018 Highlander limiteds and limited platinums sell for this, and they don't last long. And on average, 80% of them finance. And if I just play the aggregate, we'll win. And we're going to lose money on some, so what? Carvana doesn't care, neither does Amazon.
Yeah. The visual for me is this. We tend to surrender, and I'm generally speaking here, but we tend to surrender all of our power to that which we don't understand. So we see Carvana, we see Vroom, we see Shift, we see Carfax, we see anybody who's venturing into this space, and we immediately resort to a turtle in his shell by saying, oh, but they're a barbarian. Dude, you're a freaking demigod. Just because they're a
Amen.
barbarian doesn't mean you can't be a barbarian too. And you just highlighted that. But why do we oh no, they're coming for me. Dude, freaking fight back. Stand up.
It's no different than any other time where you see in ancient history where why didn't they just revolt? Spartacus, you know?
Yeah.
And as you're looking at it, dealers outnumber those retailers we're talking about. If everybody ran their play, which, and it's going to be blasphemy when I say this, it's a superior play to what we're running.
Right.
It's transparent. It takes out all the inefficiencies. If we all did that, we would cut them off at the food supply and they would starve.
100%. And there's still time. There's still so much within our control. That's why I love this conversation with you, man. It's all about taking control. You're not sitting here and scouring down. You're saying, cool, they're barbarian. There are barbarians at the gate. Guess what? I'm a Titan. I'm a barbarian.
Right.
Just because they're a barbarian doesn't mean I don't have to.
Years.
100%. So I love this conversation. Let me ask you as one final question. For the dealership listening today, what do you recommend they start working on immediately to start seeing this transformation take place?
Okay, you said no tough questions. So that's a good one. I would, without trying to boil the ocean,
right,
I would work on how do you securely take loan applications online? How do you appraise vehicles virtually? And I would mystery shop Carvana. I bought a car from Carvana and backed out on it at the last minute. But if you really want to understand the competitors, go on that journey. Right now, we're digitizing our rental car process. And right now, we're seeing a huge opportunity in terms of our used car inventories. So we're over 100 and we're planning to get to 200 in terms of rental car fleet and more. And in doing that, I'm shopping Avis, Enterprise, Hertz, and they are also superior when it comes to online experience to us. Pep Boys and places like that with parts. But whatever process we just need to emulate. Carvana has the best appraisal process. So you should emulate that. And what happens after you actually inquire about it, the follow-up that occurs, the clarity of explanation of next steps, the frequently asked questions, Vroom as well, they're fantastic. The problem is that after it goes offline and you're not dealing with a chat bot, it's a 3-hour hold time, which is their Achilles heel. So we need to exploit that. So if we can master the other stuff that they're mastering, which is, it's actually not that hard. It's hard for us to change our mindset and to change some of the legacy managers, which I'm one of them, and many of my guys are, but they see it now and they're making more money than they could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Doing it that way. And we're completely self-sufficient. We haven't bought a car at the auction in 2 years.
Wow. You know what? I don't choose to be afraid of this kind of stuff. I'm inspired by it. It excites me. It gives me something fun and new to go and investigate. Like I just took these notes. Securely take the loan application process. Figure that out online. Go on the competitor journey. Like, why wouldn't you? Copy every last email they send. Because guess what, guys? They did it to you. That's how they developed this whole process.
Right.
That's how they came up with something better, because they've bought cars the traditional way before. But then, like, to your point, you said this earlier, Brian, which is you can't, like, who are you going to call when you thought you were buying a symphony bar from the vending machine, but it actually ended up being a Toblerone? Like, who do you call? There's no number on the vending machine. And do you really want to sit on the phone for 3 hours? Like, dealers, to your point, have this ability to handle top to bottom, front, back, loyalty into ascension, generational wealth, long-term relationships. Dealerships have the control of that entire thing. And so I'm excited by the prospect of standing up against the barbarians at the gate and like you said, just knocking them off at their Achilles heel.
Absolutely.
Man, this was a pleasure. I'm so glad you were able to join me on the podcast. How can those listening get in touch with you?
Either you can email me at bkramer@germain.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube. My daughter recently got me onto TikTok. So I'm on TikTok as Kramer Brian, Twitter as Kramer Brian. I never thought I'd see the day.
Are you twerking on TikTok?
Not yet, but it's my daughter's birthday, so you never know. But you're giving me some new ideas for content.
Oh my gosh, that's the best.
Clubhouse.
Oh, I love it, man. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm Michael Cirillo, and you've been listening to the Dealer Playbook Podcast. If you haven't yet, please click the subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. Leave a rating or review and share it with a colleague. If you're ready to make big changes in your life and career and want to connect with positive, nurturing automotive professionals, join my exclusive DPB Pro community on Facebook. That's where we share information, ideas, and content that isn't shared anywhere else. I can't wait to meet you there. Thanks for listening.